Namaste and welcome everyone, and we are continuing our Sanskrit discussions. There's a very favorite topic of mine, which is Sanskrit Prosidy or Chandas, and I'd like to cover that today. It is, I believe, important for a few reasons, which we'll discuss, and I'll give some examples, and at some point I want to circle back on this and add some more examples because I think it's a very amazing part of Sanskrit literature. So I want to begin by offering pranams to my gurus, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. Om Jnana Timidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Miditam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So one thing that we have in Sanskrit, we do not have a stress on syllables. We only have a flow of long and short syllables. Now this little point here can be somewhat counterintuitive. Many languages use accent and stress as part of the, differentiation of words. In English, people have regional variations of different stress, but in Sanskrit, we do not have stress. So for example, we have a verse like Sharirendriya Sattvatma Samyogo Dhari Jivatam. It flows. There is no stress. We don't, it's not, even though it sounds sometimes a little stressed, because why? We have long syllables and short syllables. The long syllables are twice as long as the short syllables. And this length is determined by the vowel length or the following consonant. So if a syllable is a short vowel, but it's followed by doubled consonants, then it becomes long. Or if it's at the end of a verse, the end of a line. And aspirated consonants, ka, ga, cha, ja, etc., only count as a single consonant. The aspiration is just, you can think of it as an attribute of that consonant. So these are the basic rules, and these very basic rules actually form the basis of the metrology of Sanskrit verse in the, and this is true in the Ayurveda literature as well as in yoga literature, bhakti literature, rasa literature, and so on. So this very simple combination, long and short syllables, forms a very wide variety of rhythmic patterns, and these patterns are called chandas in Sanskrit. The use of chandas is a very important part of alankar, or ornamentation. So this ornamentation, it's not just decoration, it actually reinforces the mnemonic integrity. To try to compose a verse that has all of the metrics correct, that has all of the alankar, all of the poetic ornamentations properly in place and balanced, is very difficult, it's very challenging, and it's sort of like constructing a puzzle. All the pieces fit together, and they fit together a certain way. And if you take one piece out, it actually becomes fairly obvious that there's something missing. Not only do we know something's missing, we know the shape of the thing that's missing. In computer science, you have a concept of error-correcting codes, and there are different forms that those take, but basically some of these error-correcting codes allow you to reconstruct data even if some parts are missing, even if you're missing a little bit, a few bits. We do this, for example, if I say, can you bring the z now? You didn't hear the zip maybe because somebody was making a loud noise just when I said that, but you could infer from the words around there what I might have been talking about, and maybe I'm in the middle of that person was in the middle of cooking, so they're asking me for a dishpan that, you know, I know that they may already have been asking for. So that's a way that we infer things. Sanskrit also allows us to make inferences because of this kind of interlocking use of the meter. So we use scansion markings, which if you're familiar with ancient Greek poetry, you may have seen those. I have an example on the next slide. And the scansion markings help you to get started with looking at things and know, are we talking about a long or short syllable? So one rule is that it's always going to be a long syllable if the vowel part is a long vowel. If it's a, I, u, e, I, o, or ow. Even if the vowel is short, if it's followed by a combination of consonants, it becomes long. Here's an example. The U in Ayurveda is a short vowel. U is a short vowel, but it's followed by a consonant combination, the R plus V, and that makes it long. So it's Ayurveda. 3 long syllables and 1 short syllable. So that's what it looks like in scansion markings. So we use that for a long syllable, we use that for a long syllable, we use that for a long syllable, and that's the short. So these can sometimes help to clarify the rhythmic patterns. So, you know, again, here's our example. Ayurveda, long, 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 short. So although Sanskrit is a foreign language for most of us, but these rhythmic patterns make it easier to remember. You know, again, think of learning a song or think about dancing. You remember the tune, you remember the moves. You don't necessarily have to break it down into thinking, well, let's see, I put my right foot down 3 times and there was approximately 200 milliseconds between putting each tap down, and then I rotated approximately 22.5 degrees. We don't think about it that way. We just remember the movements. Our bodies are able to remember the movements. The mind is the center of the karmendriyas, and we are able to you know, relate to the way it felt when I moved through this. We do not have to break it down into thought and quantification. So these rhythmic patterns in Sanskrit also make it easier to remember. You know, so if I give you a list, can you memorize, you know, 3.1415926535897? It's a lot of numbers, and you're going to say, huh, okay, what was that? And there's no pattern. It's a random sequence. But if I give you something that's, you know, in the form of a song and things fit together, it's easy to remember. Now, we also have sutras. Sutras are very terse. They're very short. They don't have that sort of, you know, metrical elegance going for them, but they're very short, and they can be used as mnemonic keys because they're so short. Some things, for example, Sanskrit grammar is defined in only about maybe 3,000 sutras. The sutras themselves are relatively short. In Panini grammar, everything is defined by a sutra. One sutra gives a definition, another sutra builds on that definition, a third sutra combines that with another, a fourth sutra provides the exception to a rule that is defined, and so on and so on. But, you know, it sounds like a lot, but 3,000 sutras, it's not a massive amount of information to be able to remember, and people used to put the discipline in to learn this, and then they would have all this information ready to access. I know, it sounds really easy, doesn't it? But I actually didn't learn that way. So what are some sutra examples? So this is one from Vedanta Sutra, Anandamayobhyasat. Now you notice here I've actually put the scansion markings underneath just because the scansion markings that I have in the Unicode font fit together better that way. They're usually put over the word. So Anandamayobhyasat. So you see how it's long, long, short, short, long, long, long. Now, there's not really much in terms of a pattern here. I am just doing this to show you that sutras are very short. They do have a pattern. If you say the sutra with the correct pattern of long and short syllables, it should stick in your memory better than if you just said Anandamayobhyasat. If you just run everything together. You don't want to do that. You want to say Anandamayobhyasat. Anandamayobhyasat, Anandamayobhyasat. So you've got a rhythm there. You can even clap your hands to it. I know it sounds silly, but you know, if you want to remember a sutra. Now here's a sutra that's defining Ayurveda. Ayurasmin vidyate iti Ayurvedaha. So that knowledge which pertains to Ayu is called Ayurveda. So this is one of the defining sutras of Ayurveda. So if you wanted to remember this and be able to quote it, you know, that it would help to say this in the proper meter. Ayurasmin vidyate iti Ayurvedaha. Ayurasmin vidyate iti Ayurvedaha. It would help that. It would make it easier to remember. And here, and again, another sutra from Vedanta Sutra, Shakti Shakti Mator Abhedaha. You might remember from our Sankhya introduction, we start by giving this sutra from Vedanta saying that there is considered to be Shakti and Shaktiman, the energetic and the energy possessing, or the feminine and masculine aspects of the divine are considered to be aspects of the same whole. They're considered not different. So let's look at some verses. Okay, so here's a verse that we all know, or we should know, and it is one of the core definitions of Ayurveda, and I've given it here with the scansion markings. I'm assuming everyone can hear me okay. No one has said, Atul, I don't hear anything yet. Sharirendriya Satvatma Samyogo Dhari Jivitam Nityagascha Paryayayurujyate. So you see the flow here? Sharirendriya Satvatma Samyogo Dhari Jivitam Nityagascha Paryayayurujyate. Now this verse, it's a fairly common type of verse. There are a lot of verses that have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 or 9 syllables, usually 8, in each foot or pada. So this is called a pada. Because why? Because verses typically have 4 feet. There are verses that have 6 feet. There are verses that have 2 feet. But usually verses have 4 feet. And this is a very common type of verse. It is also called the shloka meter. Now in this meter, you basically do not have things do not add up exactly the same. You don't have this match of the syllables on each line. It's not as elegant, but still we want to say this with the correct flow of long and short syllables. Sharirendriya Satvatma Samyogo Dhari Jivitam Nityagascha Paryayayurujyate. So meter is called chandas. in Sanskrit, and you can say meter, or meter in English. And there are many different names. So this one is the shloka meter. There are many different types. So we're going to talk about some of these by name. And there are actually hundreds. And I wanted to give more examples, but I just have a few. So, okay, so this is shloka meter. All right. So let's look at another example. Now here's another verse. This is shloka meter from Bhagavad Gita. Yato yato nishchalati manashchanchalamastiram tatastato niyamyaetad atmanyeva vasham nayit. I did not put the scansion markings in on this one, but you can hear the flow, how it's going here. Yato, yato, short, long, nishchalati, long, short, long. Manash chanchala mastiram, tatastato niyamyaetad, atmaniyeva vasham nayet. This verse basically says, from whichever and wherever the mind has gone because of its flickering, chanchala means flickering, astira means unsteady nature, from that place, niyamya etad, atmanyeva vasham nayet. One should bring it back and bring it under the control of the self. And atma here meaning the self. So again, here is a simple shloka meter verse from Bhagavad Gita. So I started on going through a whole collection of verses, and I just wanted to, provide some examples of some of the meters that exist. So this one is called Pankti, and it's very short. You don't usually see a lot of verses like this. This has 5 syllables per foot. Krishna sanata tarnaka pankti jamunakache charu chachara. Now on this one, I'm going to draw in the scansions here. You have sorry, that's actually not. That is Krishna Sanata. It's long, short, long, long. Every line is following the same pattern. Krishna Sanata Tarnaka Pankti Yamunakache Charuchachara. So do you see how elegant that is? Every single line is following the same rhythm. So when the poet is constrained to write something this way, they have to really use a mastery of Sanskrit grammar and expression to make everything reinforce each other. This is an example given by Professor Vaman Shivaram Apte in his dictionary. And he has an excellent guide to Sanskrit Prosidy in the back. It is a verse from one of the great classical Sanskrit poets, I believe. I'm actually not sure who the author of this is, but basically it is a verse describing the gopis dancing on the bank of the river Yamuna with the beautiful Krishna, whom they consider to be the Lord of their life, like a row of gems. So it's a very beautiful verse, and the pankti means a line. So it's it's a very clever definition of the pankti meter. Now, there's also a meter called Gayatri. You've heard the term Gayatri. Gayatri is a type of prayer. it is there's a Gayatri mantra beginning with Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha. That is actually one Gayatri mantra. There are many Gayatri mantras. Gayatri also is a category of chanda, and they have, you've noticed I've just put in here 6 rather than saying 6 syllables per foot. I've just put 6 in parentheses. And there are also several sub-varieties of the Gayatri chandas. This one is called Tanu Madhyama. Tanu Madhyama means having a very beautiful waist. So this verse is also, everyone has the same pattern. Murtir mudashatror atyad buddharupa astam mama chitte nityam tanu madhya. Do you feel the rhythm here? Murtir mudashatror. So you have long, long, short, short, long, long. Murtir mudashatror atyad buddharupa astam mama chitte nityam tanu madhya. Notice that you have ati, meaning excessively. The I becomes a Y here. And when we pronounce it, we'll say atiyad, ati, it's atyad buddharupa. So it's as if we're saying at yad, but we kind of let it flow a little bit. Atyad buddharupa astam mama chitte nityam tanu madhya. So you see how that flows? I'll say it again once more. Murtir murashatror atyad buddharupa astam mama chitte nityam tanu madhya. Again, it is a verse given by Professor Apte from Bhakti Literature, saying that the form of the enemy of Mura, meaning Krishna, is astonishingly beautiful. May that astonishingly beautiful form of Sri Krishna with such a beautiful waist always reside within my heart. So it's a very beautifully poetic expression, and it's expressed in this very beautiful meter. Murtihi means form. So murtihi, in the according to the rules of Sandhi, before ma becomes murtir. So it is a feminine noun. Feminine noun ending in I. And by the rules of Sandhi, that becomes murtir in front of mudashatroho. Okay. So murti is the form, rupa also means form. And then I was in the middle of adding another example here called ushnik. Ushnik is another meter, and this is the subtype of madhumati. Ravidu hitritate. Ravidu hitritate. Now here you have the ra, vi, du, he, tri, ta, de. Bear with me for just one moment. I have to grab the book here, and I can read the rest of it. But notice that this pattern here is short, 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 long. And these, when you have verses that have long runs of short syllables, they can be a little tricky to pronounce. But this is interesting because notice that, you know, when we talked about pronunciation, we said that re is actually a vowel. It's not, if this was the R consonant followed by the E vowel, then it would be duhitri. It's not. Duhitri. Duhitri. So this is pronounced as a short syllable, and the syllable in front of it also is a short syllable. Ravi Duhitritate. So I'm just pausing for 1 second, and I'm going to. So Ravi Duhitritate. Vanakumudapati, Vanakusumapati, Vyadita Madhumati, Madhumatana Mudam. Raviduhitate, Vanakusumutati, Vyadita Madhumati, Madhumatana Mudam. It's a very beautiful verse, a little tricky to pronounce because of having all of that flow. So then there is Anushtup. Anushtup is also called the Shloka meter. So that's very common, and that has 8 syllables per foot. That's probably one of the most common meters, and there's many varieties of that. And then with 9 syllables, you have Brihati. Yes. So I am going to share these, and I have some other examples as well. Now you might ask, how far along does this go? And there is another pankti. Yes. So there is a meter called pankti, and then there is a category called pankti. So these meters are also Vedic meters. So the Vedic meters are Drishtub, Anushtup, Jagati, Pankti, Gayatri, Brihati. They are 7 in number. What am I missing? Drishtup, Anushtup, Jagati, Pankti, Gayatri. Ushnik, yes, Ushnik, which I actually already covered. Did I get all 7? Yes, okay. So there are examples of meters going all the way up to 26 syllables, and there are some with 27 or more syllables. An example of a verse with more than 27 syllables per foot goes like this. Yamalarjuna Bhanjana Mastrata Ranjana Mahiganjana Ganalasya Buram Pashupala Purandana Abhishita Kandaram Atisundara Madavindakaram Rajugopa Badhujana Viruchita Pujana Mudukujana Navavenu Danam Smadanarma Vichakshana Makila Vilakshana Matidakshana Matidakshataram. That is a verse by a medieval poet and author of bhakti literature named Sri Rupa Goswami. It is a verse about Sri Krishna. So as you can sound, as you can hear, it's really quite long, but it's also very beautiful, and it's the longest example of meter that I know. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I actually do have more examples that I'd like to post because I feel that it's such a beautiful and enjoyable and refreshing approach to Sanskrit literature, and it's if you get used to it and you treat it as a rhythm, sort of like a dance or a song, it's actually very fun. And but there's a goal I also have here, which is it's a good way to really drive home and get used to the idea that Sanskrit has a flow and it has a rhythm, and that's actually a very important part of pronouncing it, you know. So, you know, if you were, for example, if someone was going to tell me a Sanskrit verse that they had memorized because they wanted to try to learn some tenet of Ayurveda, and if they said it in the right meter, I would be very impressed. And even if they didn't pronounce everything exactly right, just getting the rhythm right, I would actually know what you meant to say. Okay, so this is actually adding additional information, and it's adding more information in our memory, and it's adding more information in your communication. So if you, were to talk to someone who knows Sanskrit and to tell them a verse, and if you actually said it with the right meter, even if you didn't pronounce everything perfectly right, they would almost certainly know exactly what you're talking about. So, something that's worth learning. Anyway, yes, and in Greek literature also you have metrics. In Vedic Sanskrit you also have intonation. So, for example, you have, Vedic hymns like the Purusha Sukta. Hari Om Sahasra Sirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapare Sabhuming Vishvato Vritvatyatishtat Dashangulam Purusha Everagun Sarvam Yadbhutam Yachcha Bhavyam. So this, of course, is something that's really quite different, and it's actually something that's much more difficult, and it's studied. There are also breathing patterns and so forth that are used as well. So I am going to end there, and I will be posting this PDF, and I actually have a few more things that I'm going to add before I post it, so it may be a little later. So I'm going to end the recording there, and thank you very much.